But a story captures the imagination. And a story brings us into it. And a story can help you see something that you might not see otherwise. And as we started thinking about doing church outside, inside, upside down, we talked about doing a series on the parables. And so we were talking that through. And as we were kind of going along with that, we just realized that we wanted to do some of the parables of Jesus. And so that was our plan. You know, Jesus taught in parables a lot. He used them a lot. And in fact, in Matthew chapter 13, verse 34, Jesus has finished this day of teaching with all the people gathered around. And the text of Matthew in 13:34 says, Jesus spoke all these things to the crowd in parables. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. Now we know that Jesus did talk to people, and he did some teaching other places without using parables. But Matthew says here, he just used parables. All of his teaching was in story. And so as we were thinking about that and lining out the parables and where we want to go with it, Phil Payne came on this book. Actually, it's written by the dad of one of his employees in his other business, Jesus Stories, Awakening to Love Through His Parables. And we just thought, this is fantastic. And it's broken down quite nicely into a really accessible way of grabbing each one of the parables. And so we read through this and we thought, let's just use this as a pattern. So, I mean, we're not going to preach from the chapters particularly, but what we want to do is encourage you to get this. We have 200 copies of this book. They're out in the foyer area, and Claudia will be out there, and you can grab one of these. If you would like to make a $5 to $10 donation for the book, we welcome you to do that. You don't have to do that. If that's a challenge, we want you to have the book. So grab the book, whether you can make a donation for the book or not. If you want to put a donation in the offering box, or you can put it in line, you can put it in online also. Just make sure you let us know that it was for the book so that we can just keep a record of that. But we really want you to have this book. Grab it up, and then we'll be reading and taking this book, and we'll give you a heads up in the week about which one of the parables we're going to be looking at. You can read it. There's application. There's some good questions. And then we'll be doing that as we read on Sunday. So please grab that book. And there are, I think, plenty certainly for every family to have one. But certainly individuals, please take those. They're out there. And if we run out, we can get more. So we just want to invite you to grab a hold of that. The first one that we're going to dive into this morning is the parable that Jesus talks about with the new wine. That you can't put new wine into old wineskins. And it's a great story. But I'm a person who likes adventure, but at the same time I'm a person who struggles a little bit with it. I'm trying to find a new pair of glasses. I wanted to show you my glasses here today. I'm not sure what I'm going to pick. These are my sunglasses, which I have brought today thinking I would need them. At the top, I get distance vision. The bottom is reading. So it's kind of helpful. I have another pair. I have a lot of glasses. These are the same as my sunglasses, only I don't really like to wear them that often unless I'm in the car. Because when I'm inside, like right now, I can see all your faces to the back. If I take them off, I can't completely tell who you are, but I can mostly tell who you are if I really know you well. But they're too close to read. So that doesn't... So Dr. Seiler and I have been talking about what's the next step in this parade. Like, what am I going to do next? These are old glasses that I have. I didn't throw away. I keep wearing my glasses. I still use them. These are office lenses, so it's really great for just right here and my computer screen, but you're fuzzy in the front row. So that's not working very well. I have reading glasses at home that I only wear. They're on my bedside table. I only use them for reading at night. I have a pair of glasses in my briefcase in my satchel that I use in my office. So I'm looking at glasses, thinking about these. So I don't know, you guys can vote if you like. I tried on like 8 pair, and they let me bring some home to show to Sharon. And that doesn't make it easier, but we do it that way. So I finally went back to Tom's office on like Wednesday, and I said, look, I took my glasses that I really like, and I said, look, I like these glasses. Can you order these in a different color? Because if they're not in a different color, and they have to be a relatively drastic different color because I'm colorblind, and I know, amazing that you guys are even here listening to me, honestly. Another pair. I look in the mirror. You ever do that when you're picking on your glasses? How do you decide? It's so hard. I don't know. So I'm gonna have to decide on that too. A couple other pairs here because I know you're interested. Right? The ones that I have, these actually are slick for riding my bike because they're really light and they hang on. But I'm trying to see if I can get a little more hip when I'm not riding my bike. This is the last pair. I don't know. Anything? What do you think? Okay, first of all, we're wet. Secondly, we don't have any idea what you're talking about. Thirdly, we don't care what your glasses look like. I get it. You know the real problem with the glasses? You know why I hang on to glasses that I have and I've had for a long time? The real problem? I don't like change. I just don't like change. I find something that works for me and I like to stay with it. My wife will tell you that if we go to a restaurant, I'm always going to suggest the same one, and almost all the time we get the same thing. And part of that's just like, I know what that is. You know, I mean, the only difference really, for the caveat here is that if you throw me on an airplane and drop me in the middle of like Vienna, Austria, I don't need to know. I love adventure. Like I'm going to go into every like local food place. I'm going to eat whatever's there. I don't ever eat American food when I travel. So I do like adventure, but change is challenging. I struggle with it a little bit. I want to eat in the same places. I usually get the same thing. I'm trying to figure out what to do about these glasses. My MacBook Air is a 2015. Now, I mean, for some of you, you're thinking, wow, my computer's a lot older than that. But for some of you, you're thinking, that's getting worn out. I don't want to change it. I have stickers on there that I like from my son's soccer team. And I don't want to change it out. And I just don't. And my phone's a 2019. It still works. But the cell phone company's very interested in me replacing it. Very interested. You have no idea. Like, how can you still be using that phone? But it works for me. And so, well, here's what I know. If I change, it's going to be painful. Because I've got to, swap the information over. And it's not, last time I changed phones, it was literally a month before the phone worked. Because they were trying to get me on a different carrier. And I don't want to do that. Like, I get up in the morning, I press the power button on my phone. If it comes on, the likelihood is I'm not thinking about changing it. That's just how I operate. And I know that, a lot of people don't operate that way, and it's okay. And some of you like changing all the time. And actually hanging on to stuff is okay sometimes, right? I don't need to hang on to I don't need to get a new phone. I can use my old phone, even if the technology is getting a little bit clunky. Technology is that's just not something that interests me. And the other side of the spectrum is a black hole from which you can never emerge. Like if you're trying to keep up with all the newest technology, I have some friends like that, and it's cool. I mean, they're techie, they like that stuff. And so, the new phone comes out and they give away their practically brand new phone and get a new one. Because they like hey, this has 3 cameras. That's really great. I don't even know what to do with 1 camera. What do you, I mean, you're going into photography, you're going to start a studio. I don't know what that means. But, it's okay sometimes to hang on to stuff. Hanging on to old glasses, it's probably not awful. I still use them. I have a very specific purpose for each pair that I have. When I get the new ones, so what Tom and I are talking about right now, because I know you're interested, is far vision, so I can see you all in the top, and in the bottom, nothing. Because I can read just fine right here. And some people have said, hey, are you going to get those glasses that help you not be colorblind? No, I'm not going to do that. I think my world would probably I would probably catch on fire. I don't have the capacity now to do that. Occasionally I'm going to wear purple with, I don't even know what other color to say. But in the first parable that we're going to look at in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus begins right off the bat by saying, there's something new coming. There's a change coming, and it's probably going to make you uncomfortable. But that's what's going to happen. There's a change coming, and it's probably going to make you uncomfortable, but that's what's going to happen. Max Dupree says, we cannot become what we want by remaining what we are. You can't become what you want to be if you're stuck where you are. And sometimes you need to be pushed or just nudged out of that space. And so today I want to just invite you to think a little bit about it. Are there places in your life that you're stuck? Is there some place you're being nudged? And is that uncomfortable for you? The likelihood is that it's uncomfortable for you, but that's what's going to happen. because change happens. I mean, what a perfect day to have to come inside from the outside, because we probably could have died out there in electrical storm, holding onto electrified instruments. I don't know, maybe it's a good idea. But change was coming. We could have made that decision a little sooner, but we didn't. And so, I think it's tons of fun and an exciting adventure. But let's take a look at Luke chapter 5, where Jesus talks about this idea that change is coming, and he describes it really to the religious people and to his disciples. Luke chapter 5, verses 33 through 39. It says, and they said to him, the disciples of John fast often and offer prayers, and so do the disciples of the Pharisees, but yours eat and drink. And Jesus said to them, can you make wedding guests fast while the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast in those days. He also told them a parable. No one tears a piece from a new garment and puts it on an old garment. If he does, he will tear the new, and the piece from the old will not match the old. The piece from the new will not match the old. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins. If he does, the new wine will burst the skins, and it will be spilled, and the skins will be destroyed. But new wine must be put into fresh wineskins, and no one, after drinking old wine, desires new, for he says, the old is good. As Jesus comes on the scene and inserts himself into the religious culture in Jerusalem and the surrounding geography, he started right off the bat by upsetting the environment and the religious system, which caused religious people to ask, hey, why are you messing with the status quo? Why are you doing what you're doing? What's going on with you? You know what the status quo is, right? The status quo, it's a Latin phrase meaning the existing state of affairs, especially as it relates to social, religious, political, or military systems. That's the status quo. It's the existing state of affairs. Now, the religious people in charge in Jesus' day liked how things were working, because they were particularly working well for them. Now, there were a lot of people who were under a burden, but for the religious leaders, it was working well. They were making money from it. They were prospering from it. It was all going fine for them. They had no interest in making changes. They wanted it to stay as it was. And if we're honest, we probably would have to say we don't like people messing with our state of affairs, right? Most of us, I mean, maybe you're like a person like you. I get up every day and it's a brand new day. I never put on the same thing twice. I never eat the same thing twice. Whatever. Probably most of us aren't that way. Like, we are people who like the way our life is organized. And particularly the older we get, the more we like it. Why? Because we organized it that way. It's working for us, and we want to stay in what's working for us. And so change is challenging. One of the problems of following Jesus, honestly, is that one of the first things he does when he comes into our life is upset the apple cart. Like, Jesus doesn't come in and say, hey, you don't need to make any changes at all. You're fine. Just keep pressing on just like you are. When Jesus enters our life, when we come to faith in Christ, not only is there an immediate change of now we're living for a different thing, not just ourselves anymore, but also there are times when he invites us into new things that we may be uncomfortable with. He invites us into new places that we may be uncomfortable with. Henry Blackaby, in his book, Experiencing God, How to Live the Full Adventure of Knowing and Doing the Will of God, says this, that following God leads to a crisis of belief. And that always challenges the status quo. And if we continue to follow Christ, it will continue to lead to change. It will continue to lead to us being invited into places that may be outside of our comfort zone. And maybe in your relationship with Jesus right now, he's pushing you outside of your comfort zone, even in this moment. Maybe you're even on the fence a little bit about whether you want to give your life to Christ. Maybe you haven't committed your life. You haven't said, yes, I'm going to follow Jesus. And it might be that part of the reason is that you're concerned about what that's going to mean. What change is that going to create? What's going to be asked of me? You know, when you enter any relationship, I mean, the likelihood is when we're pulled in quickly, we don't think a lot about it. But if we are calculating people, when you're pulled into a relationship, one of the questions you want to ask is, what's this going to change? How are things going to be different when this happens? When Sean and I got married, I was in a rhythm before we got married going to the gym. There was this gym that I went to, and I would go there most mornings, and I tried to get up by 4:30 and get to the gym because it was a really busy gym, get to work out and get home. And Sean and I got married, and we went on our honeymoon, and we got home from that, and then we went to a couple of weeks of camp, and then we got home, and we kind of got our life started to get normalized, and we moved into this little apartment, and it was in a challenging little neighborhood, and it was kind of an old apartment, and it was not, the nicest neighborhood and all that, and we kind of got settled into our routine, and one morning my alarm clock went off at 4:30 or 5:30, and I started to get up, and Sean said, where are you going? I said, well, I'm headed to the gym. He goes, now? Like, yeah, now. This is the time I usually go. She goes, not anymore. I was like, well, no, really. She goes, no, really. You're not leaving me in this neighborhood at this time of the day. Still there. It was a really funny thing, but I'm sitting up, I can literally remember sitting on the edge of the bed thinking, I don't know if I thought about this. My life's going to change. And a relationship does that. And generally, and I could surely say for my marriage to Sharon, all of the good things in my life have come in the last 35 years because of our relationship. I mean, the things that I really value in my life have come because of that marriage. I'm so grateful for it. But it did change things. And there's got to be some degree to which we go, okay, I'm going to be ready to take a step in a different direction if that's what's being asked of me. And so maybe you're on the fence. You're like, I don't know if I want to give myself to Christ because I'm pretty sure he's going to ask some things of me, and those things make me uncomfortable, and I like my life the way it is. And so the Pharisees question Jesus, but really it's not a question, it's an accusation. They say John's disciples and the Pharisees' disciples practice a strict regimen of prayer and fasting. But your disciples are working a different plan. They're feasting and drinking. What's up with that? What's going on in this picture? And Jesus' point to them is really quite simple. He says to them, the time of prayer and fasting is over for now. He says, you don't ask people who come to a wedding to fast. Like, that's a really quick way to get off the guest list of weddings. Like some really straight-faced religious guy shows up. It's like, I appreciate what's going on here and all the celebration, but I think you're a little too happy. I think the next thing that we should do is start fasting, put all the food away, and pray. Let's just be quiet together and just think about how amazing this marriage is going to be. Or if that's the way your weddings go with your kids, and people are like, just make sure we've got something going on. We don't want to be at that wedding. It's going to be a drag. That's really what Jesus is saying. Nobody fasts when there's a celebration, when the bridegroom comes, when the wedding is happening. This is when we feast. This is when we spend time together and celebrate. Our family's actually in a season of feasting right now, and it's been challenging. And it's been hard to stay in the gym. It's been hard to stay in the skinny jeans, but sorry, couldn't help that. But we've just been in a season of celebration as a family. We've had a lot going on. It's been really stuff to celebrate. Our youngest son graduated with his master's degree, and our oldest son just got married. We have a niece getting married next weekend. It's been a season of graduations and parties. And you know that thing on graduation day when you try to go to all the parties and you can't just show up. I mean, it's okay, I'll just have a little bit. And but graduations and weddings are times to feast. You're celebrating accomplishments. You're celebrating something that's happened. And that's simply what Jesus is saying. Fasting's good, and praying is good, and all those things are important, but this isn't the time for it. This is the time when you need to recognize that something new is happening in the world. We've talked about how cool it is that Jesus' first miracle that we're aware of is turning water into wine at the wedding at Cana. Like, Jesus is at the wedding. Have you ever thought about that? I mean, I brought it up a couple times over the last year, I think, but have you thought about the reality that Jesus has actually been invited? They want him there. And he comes there and he enters the celebration. And even though at first when his mother says, hey, they're out of wine, he's like, well, what does that have to do with me? He turns the water to wine, and the celebration continues. Truly, if you show up regularly to a wedding or to graduation parties and make the suggestion that it would be a lot easier and cheaper if we didn't have food, that would just seem odd, because those times are times of celebration. And so pretty simply, Jesus says things are changing, and we're going to celebrate the changes. And then he goes on to illustrate that it's probably not going to be easy. Because first of all, there's a whole new change coming, and it's not a subtle shift. It's not a subtle shift that's going to happen. When Christ calls us to give our lives to him, he asks for the whole thing. When Jesus enters the scene, and when Jesus comes on the scene in our lives, he doesn't come in to rearrange the furniture. He comes to make our lives new. It's not just a tweak here and there. He's asking for all of us, like that we give him all that we are and all that we have. He comes to do a complete remodel, not just rearrange the furniture in our lives. And he uses two illustrations to point them to what he's talking about. The first thing is he says you can't put new fabric on a garment that's already been shrunk. You can't patch old fabric with new fabric. It won't work. The old fabric's already shrunk. And if you patch an old garment that's been washed and worn and already shrunk, and then you put a patch of new fabric on it, and then you wash it again, the old fabric's not going to shrink again, but the new fabric is, and it's going to stretch and it's going to pull. It's not going to work. You can't do that. And Jesus says you can't, this is not something you can just patch up. And so when he comes on the scene, he's telling them, look, this is a whole new thing that's happening here. Like, he came to fulfill all that had been happening before, and now there's a whole new thing happening. So you can't take an old garment and put new fabric on it. It's not going to work. How many of you are old enough, or well, maybe you can do it now, it's probably coming back around, I don't know, but who wear 501, shrink-to-fit jeans? How many of you have a pair of those? I wore those in high school, and just out of high school. And a couple of years ago, I said to Sharon, I want to get the Wild Boys all a pair of 501 shrink-to-fit jeans. And she was like, why? And I didn't know. But we did it. And so we bought these shrink-to-fit. Have you ever read the instructions on shrink-to-fit jeans? Let me tell you what they are, in case you haven't, in case you get a pair. You don't want to miss this. You put them on, and then you soak them while they're on. And then you let them dry while they're on. It says it right on the, I'm not making that up. So you put on these jeans, and then you get them soaked, totally soaked, and then you let them dry while you're still wearing them. So we gave them to the boys on Christmas morning, and it's like 15, 20 minutes later, I was like, where the Wild Boys go? Where are they at? And you hear some bumping around upstairs, went upstairs, and I'm not making this up. All three of them were in our bathtub. Like a Jamaican bobsled team. Jeans are, soaked. What are you guys doing? We're like, well, we're shrinking the jeans. I have a picture of it. It's priceless. Yes, and they were all over 20 at this point. The youngest was over 20. It was really funny, but then they embraced it, right? But then they wore them. And now we're like, now what do we do? Now we can't sit on the furniture. It's Christmas, and you've done this at 9 in the morning. What are we going to do? But it's how it works. And they shrink a lot. Like, you have to buy shrink-to-fit jeans 2 sizes too big. Jesus is saying, like, once that shrinks, you can't put a regular unshrunk piece of fabric on that because it will not work. And so Jesus doesn't come in to just patch it up. He doesn't come in to just rearrange things. Then he says you can't put new wine in old wineskins. Wine used to be fermented in animal skins, usually lamb skins or goat skins. And when they're fresh, like most skin, it's pliable, it's flexible. It's not completely hardened yet. And so they have elasticity. Right? The old wineskins become brittle, but the new wineskins, the new skins they have elasticity and they can expand. And so when the winemakers start the fermentation process, the skins stretch as the yeast fermenting process expands those skins. And so it works just fine. It's 501 jeans in reverse. But it works. But once those skins have been used a few times, once that they've been used to store wine and they've expanded, once they've been used to ferment wine, they've expanded. Now they get brittle and they get hard. They lose their elasticity. And what Jesus is saying is if you take new wine and you put it in those old wineskins, it's going to grow. It's not going to work because that yeast is going to cause it to grow and it's going to burst those wineskins. And the problem with that is you're going to lose the wine and the skins. You lose everything if you try to hang on to the old and the new. There's got to be a time when you take a step. You just can't rearrange your life. And so that's what he's saying to the Pharisees. And it's going to be a process of stretching, and that's painful sometimes. And it was really painful for the religious people of the day. And it can be really painful for us too. But those are the illustrations that that connected immediately with the people. Now, you're probably not in the wine business, and even if you were, you're probably not making wine and putting it into skins. But you can relate to the story, can't you? You can relate to an older garment that's been shrunk already, and trying to put a patch of new garments on there, or a new fabric on there. Jesus says that's just not how it's going to work. Because it'll ruin everything. It ruins both the piece you're trying to patch, and it ruins the piece that you're trying to patch it with. You try to put new wine in old wine skins, it bursts the skins, and you lose the wine and you lose the skins. Jesus is just saying to the religious people, there's a very new thing coming here, and it's going to be challenging, but he invites them into it. And the words that Luke uses here for new and old don't only have to do with age, but they have to do with the nature of the material, the pliability, the elasticity of the material. The nature of the old is brittle and unbending, can't handle change. The nature of the new is pliable and has elasticity and the capacity to change. I want to just ask you this question: how often does your capacity to change or your capacity to grow directly correlate to your ability to change? I told you before, I don't like changing phones. It's really just it's just a function of streamlining my life. If I change phones in a dramatic way, I have to learn to use a whole new phone. If I keep the one I have, it's easy to deal with. And so I'm not pressing myself forward in technology. I'm not trying to learn that. But change is inevitable in every part of our lives, isn't it? I mean, it really is. And as we get older, we lose some elasticity. We're not as flexible as we were when we were younger. And so when we get older, we go to the doctor more to make sure things are working and things are, it's all perking along as it's supposed to. I had a doctor's appointment actually on Friday morning. I went in and I talked to the doctor and, did the thing. He gave blood pressure and I got blood work and all that. And later on in the afternoon, my blood work came back. And this was the note from the doctor. Your lab tests were were surprisingly reassuring. What did he say? Something like that. I was pleasantly surprised by your labs, or something like that. It's like, your lab work was reassuring. It's like, how did I look when I was in there? He's drawing blood, right? Thinking, this guy's probably not going to make it through the blood draw. I don't know. But it's like, your labs were reassuring. Well, great, good. I'll be 60 pretty soon. So, paying attention. But right when as your body gets older, you've got to pay attention to things. Because you lose the elasticity you had when you're younger. Once you get to be 60 and you fall down, you can get up, but it's harder and it hurts more. And so you've got to keep working to keep some elasticity in your body. And so when Christ calls us, he calls us almost always through change. In fact, repent is very much about change, right? When Peter was preaching that first sermon for the kingdom and the church was being born, and he said, this is what Christ has come to do. This is what's happening around you. And they say, what do we do? And Peter says, repent. It's turning around. I'm looking for a change here. You turn from the way you were going and you go another way. And frequently when Christ calls us, whether we're in the kingdom or not, frequently when he calls us, it's going to mean some kind of change. And we need to be ready for that change. One of the questions that I've been thinking about over the last week and a half or so is, how do we maintain some elasticity? Like, how do you keep changeable? What do you do in life that keeps you, sharp? For me, honestly, it is adventure. I like doing new things. I like to go see things, and I like to stretch out a little bit and experience new things. And the end of October, 1st of November, I'm going to go to South Africa. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to, for one of the weeks that I'm there, I'm going to be teaching in a leadership group that I'm a part of, and I'm looking forward to that. The second week I'm there, 5 of those days, I'm going to be with a teacher that I have a lot of respect for, doing a 5-day silent retreat. I was thinking, I should plan these. They could be lucrative, right? It's a silent retreat. You don't have to prepare for it. You just go up. When people show up, it's like, what should we do? Just don't talk. Find a space, be quiet, And it was seriously, I'll meet with Trevor for an hour in the morning, and I'll meet with the whole group, which is only 5 people, for an hour in the evening. The rest of the time is silent. I don't know how that's going to go. Silence is not my greatest gift. I'm looking forward to it, but I also have a little bit of trepidation about it. But I'm excited for the possibility of, like, God, what do you want to do in this? What do you want to do in me in this moment? And so, one of the ways that we keep some elasticity is we press ourselves to do things differently. You know, as Moses Lake Christian Church grows, change is required. When I first came to be part of this church, I knew everyone in the church personally by name, and I probably was at their house almost every week. That's how we were, just, you know, a very small group of people. I knew everyone, and I was often at their homes weekly. But that's not possible anymore. It doesn't work that way anymore. It's just like some of you in this room I actually don't know. Some of you in this room who've been coming to church for a little while, I don't know. I don't know everything that's going on. I had a stark reminder of how that works a few weeks back. I don't remember how many weeks back, but Sean and I were out of town. We came back into town on a Tuesday, and we got home. I think it was a Tuesday, and I said to Sean, I said, yeah, I need to run to the church and grab some stuff out of my office. She said, okay, you know, so I got my car and I came down. I'm driving by the church, and the parking lot is full. I'm like, they're having a congregational meeting without me. That's not good. That's never good. No, but I was like, what's going on here? The parking lot was literally full of cars, and I was like, I don't even know what's going on. How can I not know what's going on? I came in, there was a women's event. It was awesome. It was great. It was like this room was full of ladies doing, I don't know, maybe it was a birthday party for everyone or something. But it was an event that was happening. I didn't even really, I had been told about it. I'm sure it came up in staff meeting, but it just wasn't on my radar. When I showed up there, it was like, what's going on? I didn't really think there was a congregational meeting, but you never know. I just thought, and so there are 2 ways of responding to that. The first way is to say, why do I not know what's going on? Why is there stuff going on here that I don't know about? That's one way. And if you want to control everything, that's the way you would respond to that. The other option is to say, it's super exciting that there's a ton of stuff going on here that I don't know anything about and I'm not involved in. Because what it says is there are people doing work, and the ministry is happening, and people are investing in each other's lives, and that is super cool. It's so fun when the church does that. And I know that sometimes we say, you know, I really like a smaller church. I get that, but think about this. Things that are alive and healthy grow. They just do. It's not the goal of Moses Lake Christian Church to become a large church, but it is our goal to be alive and to be a winsome voice in the community. And our hope is that as we do that, people will want to come and be a part of it, that they'll want to engage with it, and that there'll be people we can share the gospel with who currently don't have the gospel. So that's what we do. And when you do that, it grows. If you start a business and your business is going well, it'll grow, and then you got to figure out how to manage it. And so it's challenging sometimes to grow, but it's really important. We have to stay elastic. I was talking with my friend Eric Fry a few weeks back, and I was telling him I was going on this South African trip, and he started laughing. I was like, why are you laughing? And he said, I'm laughing at you. I said, why are you laughing at me? He says, I was talking to this lady at my church the other week, and I asked her how they were doing and where they were going to church. She said, well, not someone who goes, and I don't even know who this person is, but he said, where are you going to church? And she said, Moses Lake Christian Church. And he said, oh, that's cool. Have you met my friend John Roberts? And she said, no, I haven't. Who is that? That's not a bad thing. You know, I don't preach every week anymore. I don't do all the things that I used to do. I'm not involved in worship every week. That's good. That happens as things grow. A funny thing, Phil and I laugh about this, just like on the inside, just a little bit. You know, Phil and I, we don't really look alike, I don't think. We actually, our preaching style is a little bit different, but it's kind of similar. But it's not infrequent that someone will give him credit for my sermons. I'm not making this up. Literally, one Sunday I was on the floor here. Phil and I were standing together. I had just preached the sermon. People were coming out. I had just preached it. Phil and I were standing together. Someone came out and came right up to Phil. I was standing right there. Came right up to Phil. That was a great sermon. That was just so meaningful. It was just awesome. Thank you for that. I never thought about that in that way. And Phil's looking at me, and I'm looking at him like, just let it go. It's not worth it. Literally it happened. Happened to us standing outside about a month ago. We're standing outside, and it's a Monday, and somebody's walking up, and Phil and I are standing together, and he had preached on that Sunday, and the person walks right up to me and was like, oh, the sermon was great. So we're loving this series. It's amazing. And we're just like, yeah, that's so good. But that's happening because we're not just single personality church anymore. And that's really important. But sometimes it's challenging. And so we have to pay attention to that. We have to stay elastic. We have to be pliable. We want people to come to this community and to find it engaging. I can't know everyone anymore. I can't be, and Bill can't either. And one of the things we're trying to do is build a community of engagers. Let me just invite you to this. You, if this is your church, if this is your first Sunday here, you're just visiting and you just pass it through, we're so glad you're here. But if this is your church, what we would love to see is you engage. We are seeing it, right? Think of yourself as an engager. Every person who walks onto our lawn in the future summer services, or every person who walks in the front door, we believe is a person looking for a connection. And there's a responsibility we have there to love and to welcome the people that God brings to us. You could be the face of someone who greets another person in a welcoming way, in a winsome way on a Sunday morning that causes them to say, I'm really interested in what's happening here. We believe the importance of that is that the kingdom of God is the most blessed life. That's what we believe. That's what we're doing here. And so we want people to find that. But what Jesus does at the end of this parable, and I'm going to wrap this up here, but he hits us on the head at the very end. And what he says is you have to make a conscious decision to go with the new because the old is familiar and comfortable and you're going to want to stay there. Right? Jesus specifically says this, and no one after drinking old wine wants new wine, for he says the old wine is better. Right? Now, I'm not really a wine aficionado. I don't know much about it, but you do hear people talk about it. It's like, oh, that's this vintage or something. It's never like last week. Right? You got to try this wine. We just picked the grapes yesterday. Okay, that's not... Nobody says that. It's like the old wine. It's like, this is really impressive. I've got this bottle that was put in this bottle back in 1981 or something. It's the old wine that's better. That's what people say. And the potential for many of us, maybe even most of us, is to get stuck in our comfort and not let ourselves get pushed out of it. But if we don't let ourselves get pushed out of it, we can't experience all that God has for us. And so sometimes we have to be ready to make a change. God's looking to do something new in us. I just heard this last week. Catherine Booth, who was the co-founder of the Salvation Army, says that if you want to get to the future, you have to disturb the present. If you want to get to where you're going in the future, you have to disturb the present. And so God is looking to do something new in us. I think in all of us. We're reading a book in our men's group on Wednesday morning, Bob Goff's book, Undistracted. And he says this in the book, everyone gets about 4,000 weeks. Think about that. The average lifespan of a person in America is 78 to 79, somewhere in there. It's 4,000 weeks. He actually suggests in the book, you should do the math and see where you're at. Like some of you, you're living a bonus time. Right? You're past that already. And that's amazing and awesome. Some of us, we're pressing up to it. But the question that is important to ask here is, what are you going to do with the time you have left? You don't know how much time you have left. That's not up to you. But what are you going to do with the time you have left? Whatever time that is. Some of you are early in your journey. Some of you have lots and lots of weeks left. Most of us are somewhere in the middle. But if I get to live as old as my dad is now, which I think is a pretty good chance, he's perking along pretty good, even though he's had a few hitches lately. But if I get to live as long as my dad has lived so far, then I've got 1,200 weeks left. That's a little bit of a stark thing. 1,200 weeks. What you going to do with your 1,200 weeks? I'm not sure if that's going to be helpful to you or not, but it puts in perspective that we don't have unlimited time. And that when God's nudging us, maybe we've got to take a step. And we get to decide what we do. I mean, I could say, well, I'm 70% of the way to the end. I think I'll coast from here. I've actually asked myself that question. Do I want to coast from here? I'm 70% of the way there. Maybe I'll do a little bit less with the other 30%. But we have to make that decision. What are you going to do with what time you have? Are you willing to keep moving and looking for the new call in your life? Can you stay pliable and elastic? It's mostly a state of mind and body. Do what you can to keep your mind sharp, and do what you can to keep your body functioning. And then listen for the way that you're being called, and what can you do, and where can you go with the life that you have. The prophet Ezekiel speaks these words to God's people in Ezekiel 36, 25 through 27. I'm going to do a new thing in order to make my name great. Right? The prophet says, I will sprinkle clean water on you. Just keeps getting better and better today, doesn't it? We just have this mass baptism by sprinkling. That's not usually the way we do it, but that's the way we do it today. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean from all your uncleanness, and from all your idols I will cleanse you, and I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh, and give you a heart of flesh, and I will put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes, and be careful to obey my rules. I'm going to put a new heart in you. God spoke through the prophet Isaiah in chapter 43. Remember not the former things, nor consider the things of old. Behold, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. God wants to do a new thing. In Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 and 23, Solomon writes, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They're new every day. Great is his faithfulness. So if you're breathing air and hearing my voice, I want to say to you that God isn't done with you. I ran into some friends, Sean and I ran into some friends at the farmer's market yesterday, and the wife just got a tattoo, and the tattoo says, still breathing. And I was like, what is that tattoo about? Her dad passed away not that long ago, but she said, whenever someone would ask my dad, how's he doing? He would say, still breathing. And so she had it tattooed on her arm. It's just like, I'm still going. I got another day. I'm still here. I got to decide what I'm going to do with that day. And so if you're listening to my voice, if you're hearing my voice, I want to say God's not done with you. He's got something new for you. He's got more for you. You can cling to what's past and hold on to it, and you can try and rearrange the furniture in your life so you're comfortable. You can cling to the comfort of how things are, or you can say, Lord, show me what you have that's new and give me the courage to do it when I see it. Because it's probably going to take courage. And your age doesn't matter. It's your heart and your vision for what can still be done. Remember the man at the pool who'd been lame for almost his whole life, 38 years he'd been lame, and Jesus comes face to face with him, and the first question that he asks him is, do you want to be healed? It seems like not a great question. And the guy says, well, of course I want to be healed. I'm here at the pool every day, and I just can't get in fast enough. But the question that Jesus asks is a real one. You want to be healed. Because if you want to stay where you are, then I'm willing to let that happen. But if you want to be healed, here's the next step. Stand up. And he did. And so, where are you at in all this? Are you ready to listen, to hear God's voice and take a step some direction? Or are you done? Because God's probably going to call us into newer and newer things as we continue to walk. Some things will stay the same, but he's pressing us forward. I first met Earl Palmer in July of 2008. In July of 2008, Earl Palmer was the pastor of University Presbyterian Church in Seattle, and he's a great teacher. He's a C.S. Lewis scholar. And I was taking a class from Earl Palmer, and I was struggling a little bit at the time with where I was headed in life and ministry and all that. So I asked him if we could have lunch, and he said, yeah. So we had lunch, and we were talking about, I was just telling him, I feel like I'm getting older, and I don't know, if I need to make changes. Is it time, or what am I supposed to do? And he was just kind of quietly eating his lunch. And finally, he looked up at me and said, how old do you think I am? And look, that's a trick question. I know. I'm not going to, that's odd, I have no idea. No, he said, just guess. So I picked the number 70. I thought that was low. Turned out it was 70. He says, you know what? I'm 77 years old. He said, when I wake up every day, the first thing that I say to myself is, my best days are ahead of me. I say it every day. When I get out of bed, I say, my best days are ahead of me. Because if your best days are behind you, it's tough to go forward with energy. That was 2008. The next time I ran into Earl Palmer was in 2018. Charlotte and I were in Oxford. We were at C.S. Lewis's house, the Kilns, and we were doing this little kind of tour and looking around at stuff. And it was really super cool to be in C.S. Lewis's house. I love C.S. Lewis. And we're in there, and I hear this bumping around in the hallway, and I'm like, I wonder what's going on. So I walk down the hallway. There's Earl Palmer. And I said, Dr. Palmer! And he said, no, it's just Earl. Okay, well, Earl, what are you doing here? Well, I'm here researching for some stuff that I'm doing, and I'll be teaching you. Like, who are you? I said, I met you in 2008. I did this class at Regent. I'm certain you didn't remember me, but he probably said something nice like he did. But we had this great conversation. He said, where are you from? I said, I'm in Moses Lake, Washington. He said, I'm going to be out in that neighborhood soon. I said, what do you mean? Well, I'm going to be doing the speaking thing in Ephrata for my friend Mark Bassett's church. Like, we had a chat about that. Now, Earl Palmer's 87, that time. And he's at Oxford, and he's bumping around C.S. Lewis's house doing research because he's writing papers and he's still speaking. I just listened to his most recent sermon. He's 91 now. His most recent sermon was May the 7th. I just listened to it. It was fantastic. Every day I get up, I say to myself, my best days are ahead, not behind me. And so, that's not because he's superhuman. That's because he's decided to see the future rather than the past. He's decided to step into the call rather than lurk around where he's been. We may have to do work in the past. I'm not saying we don't. But we live there, and it's going to be hard when Jesus calls. So when Jesus steps onto the scene, and these religious people are saying, what are you doing? Why are you changing things up? And Jesus says, because that's how it's going to be. There's something new coming. And it's going to be hard, but I want to invite you into it. And so let me invite you into that. I was reminded of her when I was preparing for this morning. It was just interesting to think about that, and for any of us. What are the next things? What's the nudging that we're hearing from the Lord? So some questions for us. Are we ready and willing to follow Jesus into the new direction of our life? Have you been feeling a tug toward a new direction? Has God been by the Holy Spirit in Scripture, in conversation, in circumstance, pulling you into something new? And if He is, are you ready to step into it? Are you resisting it? And if you are resisting it, why? It's important to answer these questions, even to know ourselves. Like, why is this causing me tension? Are you hanging on to the old and uncomfortable ways of living rather than intentionally seeking after what God has for you? Are you coasting to the finish line? You know, we have an idea of retirement in our country, but it's not a common idea around the world. We can step out of the work that we've been doing that paid us to do stuff that doesn't pay us, but retirement's not really a biblical concept. The older we get, hopefully the more we can live into people's lives. What's God calling you into? Or are you just coasting? And what's one way that God's coaxing you out of your comfort that you've been resisting? And how can you take a step into that as this coming week unfolds? That's what I want to invite you to do with this message. God, what are you asking? Are you inviting me into something new? And if you are, make it clear to me and give me the courage to take the steps into it as I walk out and into what's coming next. Let's stand together. I'm going to pray for us as we conclude. Father, I want to thank you for this gathering of people. And I want to thank you for the quirky rainstorm and the lightning coming that caused us to move inside. Not because I'd rather be inside than outside, but because it was just a really clear picture of sometimes what we do in our lives. We think it's going to go one way, and you call us another. And there's nothing like being willing to step into that adventure, and it makes memories. And so we thank you for the way that you moved us today and how you want to move us into the future. God, I want to pray that you would help each of us in this room to be people who are ready to hear your voice and who are staying pliable enough by looking for new, by listening for new. Not that old stuff is not good and that we can't hang on to some old stuff, because there's some of the old stuff in our life that's the best. But when you call us, we want to be ready to take a step Help us not to be like the religious people who are like, what are you doing? You're messing with my program. You're wrecking it all. Help us to be people who say, what's the next step? Behold, we want you to make something new. And so I pray that you would open our eyes to see what you have for us, that you would open our ears to hear what you have to say to us, and then you would give us the courage to take our feet in our hands and put ourselves to the task that's in front of us, whatever it is that you've called us to. We want your life to grow in us and to spill out of us into the world around us. In Jesus' name, amen.